Verónica,
Yes.
si les parece, podemos comenzar.
Sim. Yes.
Ok.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Every wherever you are in the world, welcome. My name is Veronica. I work at Brazil Institute of Geography and Statistics, and I also represent the United Nations Regional Hub for Big Data in Brazil. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to today's event, organized in partnership with the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. This is the second webinar in our special series focused on sustainable development indicators. The series features presentations in English and Spanish with experts from Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as other regions. Through this initiative, our hub reaffirms its commitment to promoting the responsible and strategic use of innovative approaches, including big data, data sciences, artificial intelligence, and alternative data sources, to strengthen national statistical systems and support progress towards the SDGs in the region. Today's webinar is titled Integrating Multiple Data Sources for Monitoring of SDG 15 Life on Land. With this event, our hub aims to share experiences and innovations on integrating multiple data sources for SDG 15 indicators. The goal is to support biodiversity conservation and the sustainable use of ecosystems. I'm pleased to welcome my colleague, Leonardo Bergamini. He is a biodiversity analyst, holds a degree in biological sciences and a PhD in ecology and evolution from Federal University of Goiás, with a focus on evolutionary insect ecology and insect-plant interactions. He currently works with environmental statistics, indicators, and ecosystem accounting in Brazil. Before we begin, just a few quick reminders. Today's session is being recorded and live captions are available. Recordings of past sessions can be found on Hub's website. Feel free to submit your question in the WebEx chat at any time. We will address them during the Q&A at the end. And since we have participants joining us from all around the world, we invite you to share where you are coming from. Just type your country in the chat. Leonardo, thank you very much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Veronica. I'll share my screen. Please let me know if it works. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. And, hello, everyone. My name is Leonardo Bergamini, and today I'm going to talk a bit about the data sources used for SDG 15 monitoring. This presentation will be divided in three sections. At first, we will see some context on the 2030 agenda, its monitoring and indicators and data flows. Next, I will go over the targets and indicators of SDG 15 Life on Land, showing the data types and the institutions involved in its indicators. And finally, we will have a more in-depth view of indicator 15.3.1, proportion of degraded land over total land area, to exemplify its production process and how different data sources are used for its calculation. As most of you may already know, the Sustainable Development Goals are a global agenda seeking international cooperation around 17 goals to promote humanity's development on multiple aspects. One way to visualize the interconnections between goals is to categorize them according to their relationship with different relations of human life. And with some objectives more directly connected to the biosphere and the ecosystems that form the basis on which our society grows. So we have a basis here of the objectives related to the biosphere that are SDG 6, related to clean water for everyone, objective 14, that deals with life on the sea, underwater, objective 15 for life on land, and SDG 13 related to climate action. So these objectives have form this basis for our society. Next, we have a second layer of goals that deals with aspects of people's lives, such as health, food, gender equality, education, that depend on the biosphere and the ecosystems to thrive. And another set of goals related to the economic development that must be environmentally and socially sustainable in order to ensure the sustainable development that we aim to achieve. And finally, we have the SDG 17, which deals with to consolidate the partnerships that are necessary for achieving all other goals. It is clear that all these goals are connected, and they encompass a variety of themes. So they demand a robust monitoring strategy to assess our progress towards them by 2030. Considering all 17 SDGs, each one has specific targets, and in total, the 2030 agenda comprises 169 targets. The Global Indicator Framework for the SDG agenda was developed by the Interagency Expert Group on SDG Indicators and was adopted in 2017 and was reviewed in 2020 and also in 2025. After the 2025 comprehensive review that was published this year, we now have in the Global Indicator Framework 234 indicators, unique indicators, because some of them are used to monitor more than one target. We'll see that later. And this global set of indicators has to take in account difference in data availability between countries and also the country's capacity to compile this data. Those indicators are then used to assess global progress on each goal. Every year, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs prepares a report in collaboration with the entire UN statistical system, consisting of more than 50 international regional agencies. And this report is based on data from over 200 countries and territories. And the last report from this year has shown that while we can see some improvement in some of the targets, and we have some data showing the improvement of millions of lives regarding the SDGs, we still do not have a current enough progress to fully achieve all the goals by 2030. So while only 18% of the goals have been met already or are on track to meet the targets by 2030, we have the same percentage that are actually showing regression compared to the 2015 baseline. Some of them show stagnation with no improvement, and some with marginal or moderate progress. So the data for these indicators to make the global SDG indicator database has this slide showed how this data is produced. The global SDG indicator database is maintained by the UN Statistical Division, and the data is provided by two regional agencies that are custodians to each indicator. The custodian agencies coordinate methodological standardization and work together with the national statistical systems of the countries to ensure proper data, metadata recording, as well as data validation and mainly international comparability of this data. The National Statistical Offices play a key role on this process since they coordinate the national statistical systems and work together with the ministries and other national institutions to produce the official data that will be used to indicator production. Other sectors of society, such as civil society organizations, private sector, academia, interact with the national statistical system, both as data providers and data users, and this whole cycle is needed to foment the SDG monitoring. In Brazil, the SDG agenda is internalized by the National Commission for SDGs, which is linked to the Secretariat of the Presidency of the Republic and involves federal government, ministries, state governments, municipal governments too, and civil society representatives. And IBGE, the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, is one of the technical advice institutions and has the role of coordinating the production of indicators. Within IBGE, we have an indicator production committee that brings together all of the departments of the institute, our surveys directorate, the geoscience, the National School of Statistical Science, and each SDG is assigned a specific coordinator and vice coordinator, and this people is responsible to the production of the indicators in partnership with the institutions responsible for the data. And it's this coordinated work, IBGE works with other institutions. Some of the SDGs, some of the indicators are mainly derived from data that IBGE itself produces, such as surveys and economic data. But in other cases, as is the case for SDG 15, most of the data comes from other institutions. And all these indicators, along with the metadata, is made available on this online platform. Here we have the link to visit and know it. And it's a work of dissemination of this data for all societies to be able to access the indicators that we produce. Okay, so this was an introduction regarding the data flows for those indicators. Now I'll talk about the indicators related to SDG 15. This goal, with the short name Life on Land, aims to protect, restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. This SDG has 12 targets, and they are most of them are closely aligned with other international conventions, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, the Nagoya Protocol, an international treaty on plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. We also have the target 15.3 related to the convention of the UN Convention to combat desertification, indicators related to poaching and illegal trafficking that are related to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild, Fauna, and Flora, CITES. And taking together those targets cover multiple aspects related to the protection of land biodiversity. Reminding that SDG 15 is focused on terrestrial biodiversity, while we have the SDG 6 and 14 that deal with freshwater and marine ecosystems. So for the monitoring of those 12 targets, the Global Indicator Framework presents 12 unique indicators. Here I'm also including the C15.1.c, that is a complementary indicator that is recommended by the CEPAL for the America Latina and Caribbean. that we produce here in Brazil. Some of those indicators are used to monitor more than one target. I will talk each one of them and explain their data sources and institutions involved. Indicators 15.6.1, 15.8.1, and 15.9.1 are all derived from questionnaires that are filled out by national institutions. So these targets are related to invasive alien species, integration of ecosystem biodiversity values in governmental planning, and the access to genetic resources and the fair sharing of their benefits. So all of those targets are related to the CBD, which also has targets for each one of those things. Each one of them has different questionnaires that are filled out mainly by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. And also in the target 15.9, there's one question about the implementation of the SEA system of environmental economic accounting, and this data is provided by IBGE itself. All of those targets in the indicators have questions relating to the national biodiversity strategy and biodiversity, the national plans, the national strategy and action plans for biodiversity that have national targets related to each one of them. The next ones are indicators used for the monitoring of two targets. Each indicator of these reports for two targets, and both are derived from existing database. So we have indicator 15.8.1 that is used both to monitor target 15.A and 15.B that are related to financial resources, both for the conservation of ecosystems and also for sustainable forest management. These indicators are derived from the FINE and DEC databases from OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. In this category, we also have indicator 15.7.1 that is used to monitor two targets, the target 15.C and 15.7, related to poaching and traffic of wildlife, and also for protected species. At the global level, this data is derived from the database of the CITES Convention. Brazil fills out reports for CITES, but we also are working with the Brazilian Institute of the Environment and Renewable Natural Resources, IBAMA, to produce a national proxy that also considers the data on domestic traffic. So CITES is only concerned with the international poaching and trafficking, but we also have national data. We are now with a working group trying to make a proxy to capture this aspect too. The next one is indicator 15.5.1 related to target 15.5, that is to protect biodiversity and natural habitats. The target aims to protect all biodiversity, but we at the moment only have indicators for the threatened species threatened with extinction. At the global level, this indicator is based on the IUCN Red List, but we also have national red lists that are made by the Chico Mendes Institute of Biodiversity Conservation and the National Center for Flora Conservation, ICMBio, ICMC-Flora. ICMBio does the assessment for the fauna species, while ICMC-Flora does it for the plant species. We have periodic reevaluations, and we use this data to inform the 15.5.1 indicator. The national assessments are made by these institutions, but they follow the same categories and criteria for the developed by the IUCN. Another group of indicators are those related to protected areas. So there are indicators regarding protected areas in two targets, target 15.1 and 15.4. One is general for terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems, but we also have target 15.4 that deals with specifically with mountain ecosystems. The main data source for these indicators is the National Registry of Conservation Units that is maintained by the Department of Protected Areas from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. For the target 15.1, we have indicators both for the coverage of protected areas regarding the whole country, but also an indicator that deals with the coverage of protected areas in specific sites that are internationally recognized as important for biodiversity. These sites are provided by the KBA, Key Biodiversity Areas Initiative, that use data on endemic species of some groups and recognize globally sites that are important to conserve these species. So we made an intersection between those key biodiversity areas and the national conservation units. And for target 15.4, we have the same indicator, but now we start looking at the mountain regions. We use the FAO map for the global mountain areas and have the data for key biodiversity areas in mountain areas that are covered by conservation units. And this indicator is also disaggregated by mountain types. In Brazil, we only have two classes of this international mountain classification, mountain areas that are restricted to some areas, and also remaining mountainous areas that cover other regions of Brazil. Other group of indicators is related to forests. So we have two indicators related to forest area and sustainable forest management. These indicators are based on data compiled by the Brazilian Forest Service, SFB, and that is also used to report on the Global Forest Resource Assessment. That is an assessment conducted by FAO every 5 years. The forest area indicator, for example, use data from multiple sources. So the SFB uses data from the vegetation maps that are produced by SDG, process it with data about deforestation that is produced by the National Institute of Space Research, and indicators on sustainable forest management have many subcomponents that also use data on forests, forests in conservation units, forest certification for sustainable use, and so on. Finally, we have other two indicators that have to do with land degradation. One of them, in the target 15.4, is based on land use and land cover data produced also by IBG, and the transitions are classified according to the in degradation or not. Also, this indicator also uses the FAO mountain layer to define the areas. And finally, the indicator 15.3.1 that also deals with desertification and degraded land will be used as an example. I will be showing the next session more details about it. Well, indicator 15.3.1 is closely aligned with the UNCCD. UNCCD is the custodian agency for this indicator, is responsible for the methodological guidance to its production, and this indicator is also adopted by the convention as one of the main data sources for its monitoring. So it's an indicator that serves both the SDG agenda and also the UNCCD itself. In 2021, the second edition of the Good Practice Guidance was published, with all recommendations of the methodology, including recommended data inputs, analytical procedures, and so on. There is a margin for national adjustments to better represent each country characteristics, for instance, input choices or criteria to aggregate the sub-indicators. But the existence of this methodological guidance is really necessary to ensure international comparability in the indicator results. So all the production of the indicator must follow these guidelines. This applies to all other indicators I have been talking to till now. Each one of them is assigned to a custodian agency that does this work of standardization and methodological guidance. The working group to develop this indicator was established in 2018. At first, it counted with researchers from IBGE and from the Brazilian Agriculture Research Company, Embrapa, from their team that works specifically with soils. This group had several meetings and discussions doing tests on the methodology proposed by UNCCD. UNCCD made available a platform, a plugin to QGIS to compute this indicator, but it was not very easy to customize some of the parameters. So this led to several tests and multiple versions of the computation. During the following years, including the COVID-19 quarantine, the group worked on this implementation and methodological steps. In 2023, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, through its Department of Combating Desertification and Mitigating the Effects of Drought, started the update process for the National Action Plan to Combat Desertification, PAB Brazil. So, due to this, the ministry joined the efforts with our working group, IBGE and Embrapa, and also brought in the technical expertise of the Observatory of Caatinga and Desertification. This is a network of researchers from the semi-arid region of Brazil. They have many specialists on soil degradation and desertification. And through collaboration with the team, we're able to advance the computation of the indicator. In 2024, we reached a new proposal for the indicator calculation. The PAB Brazil was published, the National Action Plan. The group reached a consensus on the methodological details and that were then presented to the technical team at the UNCCD. So we had this step of validating all the adjustments that Brazil had made to the indicator. And it was finally published in May this year, 2025. This indicator is a combination of data on three different aspects of degradation. So it has data on land productivity, land cover, and soil carbon. Productivity data is obtained through remote sensing. Among the recommended inputs, possible inputs, there is the net primary productivity from the mode sensor, and this one was selected in Brazil. For the land cover data, it's used the IBGE monitoring that I talked earlier, that is also used on indicator 15.4.2. This monitoring is based on image interpretation and all other validation sources and has a time series from 2000 to 2020. And the soil carbon was from a mapping provided by Embrapa. That is the result of a models. This data is modeled from field data from soil profiles and also vegetation, remote sensing, climate variables that produce this model and estimates soil organic uh, carbon content. The productivity sub-indicator in this term is comprised, analyzes three subcomponents regarding the temporal and spatial patterns of productivity estimates. So it looks at the trajectory, the state, and the performance of the land productivity. For the productivity trajectory, the time series of annual integrals of productivity is analyzed in a time series. So for each pixel, an annual integral of productivity is computed, represented here in the different shades of green. In this image, it talks about NDVI, one spectral index, but in our case, we use the net primary productivity product from MODIS. This annual data is then analyzed in a time series, and there we use statistical tests to detect the existence of trends. So if there's an increasing tendency for the productivity values, that pixel is classified as an improvement. If there's a negative trend, it's classified as degradation. And if there is no trend or an unstable trend, it means that pixel is stable according to this criteria. These are the results for Brazil. So here on the left, we have the productivity trajectory subindicator for the reference period that covers 2000 to 2015, those 15 years. Purple areas are those that show a degradation with declining productivity trajectory in these 15 years. Green areas show improvements, and the rest are stable areas. And the right map shows the results for the subindicator in the reporting period that looks at 2019 and the previous years. The second component of the productivity subindicator is also a temporal analysis. It takes the 3 last years and compares them with the previous period. So we have a distribution of values of productivity values, and if the pixel, the mean value in the last 3 years is less than the mean values in the longer period, we can say that there is an evidence of degradation. So each pixel is compared in the last 3 years is previous periods. Here are the maps for the country. So we also see some areas showing improvements. That is the last 3 years of the reference period, 2015, 2014, and 2013 show higher productivity values, while other areas show evidences of degradation. And in the reporting period, we have less pronounced changes. And finally, for the productivity subindicators, the third component is a special comparison this time. So each pixel is compared with other pixels that should be expected to have a similar productivity value. So this is defined by producing units that should theoretically have similar productivity values. In our case, these comparison units were defined using soil types and the classification of terrestrial biomes. So pixels that have the same soil type and same biome hypothetically should have a similar productivity values. So for each pixel, its productivity value is compared with other similar pixels, and if it has below the half the max productivity of that class, it is potentially degraded. So we have here in Brazil, in the Cerrado biome, areas that have low productivity compared with other areas of the same biome and the same soil type. Also in the margins, with the Pantanal, the Amazon, different regions. This performance component, it only highlights areas with less productivity than similar areas. So it only has the possibility of being stable or degraded. And each of those three components, trajectory, state, and performance, are then aggregated to derive a single land productivity in the sub-indicator. So for each pixel, will be considered degraded if two or more of those components show degradation. If there is disagreement between them, it may be shown as stable, or if two components show improvement, it will be marked as improvement. So here are the results. In the reference period, we have some areas showing degradation, some showing improvements, and also in the report period here, we have some degrading areas. The next sub-indicator regards land cover. So first, our national classification of land cover is compatibilized with the UNCCD classes. So we have artificial areas, agriculture that includes managed pasture and mosaic of occupations. We have also forest areas, including native forest and silviculture, also plantation forests go into this class. We have wetlands, exposed soil, and water. Then for each pixel and for each period, the transitions observed between classes are classified using this transition matrix. So a pixel that started as a tree-covered area and turned into a cropland is marked as a degradation, and so on. Or artificial areas that became tree-covered are improvements. So each transition is classified according to this matrix. And here are the results for this sub-indicator. We can see here where in the country there have been land cover transitions that may be classified as degradations for both periods. Finally, the last sub-indicator is based on soil organic carbon. So when you have land cover change, the carbon content in the soil does not vanishes instantly. So this indicator uses conversion factors to estimate how much of the carbon that existed in the soil in that area remains after a given time period after the land cover change. So this analysis crosses information on the land cover change with that reference map of carbon soil content and estimates how much carbon is left each year following the changes. And when the change in that pixel exceeds 10% in the loss of soil carbon, it is marked as a possible degradation. So we can see that these maps depend heavily on the land cover changes maps, but it's weighted by the different soil carbon contents that existed originally in each pixel. The last steps are then the aggregation of these three sub-indicators. So we have for each one of them the two periods. They are then aggregated according to the one out, all out rule. That is, for each pixel, if any of those three sub-indicators shows a degradation process, it is marked as potentially degraded. This results in two maps. You have one for the baseline period and one for the reporting period. And those two maps are compared, are aggregated in a way that if a pixel has shown degradation in the baseline period and then in the next period it did not improve, that means it is still degraded. So we have a final map of the indicator that combines the three sub-indicators and also the two time periods. It shows for the reporting period 2016 to 2020 which areas have signs of degradation in any of those sub-indicators, be it in this specific period or in the last one that did not improve. If the pixel was degraded but showed improvement in the following period, it will be marked as stable. Well, one of the difficulties we had with this indicator is that the land productivity sub-indicator is really sensitive and potentially may be affected by artifacts on the data. So after that long development process, we achieved a solution that was to apply a filter. So areas that we know that have only natural vegetation are not suffering impacts currently, and the indicator shows a potentially degraded, were filtered out as false positives, and resulting in this last, the final map of the 15.3.1 indicator, showing the areas with degradation and improvements. We can see here that the main factors driving this degradation process are land use conversions. In Brazil, we have many areas, many in this interface between Cerrado and the Amazon forest that are agricultural frontiers. Many areas have been cleared in this period to advance crops and pastures. But we also have in the northeastern Brazil, in the semi-arid regions, areas that have different types of occupation, but also show declines in the productivity and soil carbon sub-indicators. So this map is a important input for public policies. It allows us to see areas that have showing signs of degradation, and it will be used as one of the inputs for the National Action Plan and also for our land degradation neutrality goals. Okay. So as final remarks, I would like to remember that we have only 5 years left to reach the SDGs. Although there is real progress, the current pace is not sufficient yet. So I see that data and derived indicators, they should be a call for action for all society, not only for the governments, but for all society. So for that, it is important to have good data and also make sure that this data reaches all levels of society. Everyone has to be informed about this to change not only their personal activities, but also to make sure that governments and institutions do what they can to reach these sustainable development goals. And a last point is that beyond the information per se that we produce during this all these indicator processes, the partnerships that are established between institutions also are a valuable progress. It foments discussions, technical interchange, and also serve as a starting point for future collaborations. So that's it. I would like to talk to you today. Thank you for your time. Here are my contact information, some websites related to SDG and our environmental area. And we may now move to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Leonardo. This is an excellent and insightful presentation. Let's move to the Q&A segment. Please keep your question coming in the chat. I have some questions, okay? We've seen that there are many different actors involved in providing data for SDG indicators. What would you say that was the main challenge in coordinating engagement in these actors?
Thanks, Veronica, for the question. Yes, one of the main challenges for SDG 15 is that its targets and indicators involve multiple institutions. So we have to make contacts with different sectors. We have challenges, for instance, when the government changes. So we have changes in focal points. Sometimes the work that has been already been started goes back to the Mark Zero because the people change. We have some difficulty too because each of those actors has their own agenda, has their work to do, and when IBGE comes asking for data, and sometimes it's not their priority to provide this data. So it's really challenging. We have to be really persistent, but we have been able to achieve success. For most of the indicators are now produced. We have established contact points with the different ministries involved in this data production, and it's indeed a challenge, but it's a rewarding one when we can produce this data and see that the data is being useful.
Okay. I have another question, a technical one. You mentioned that a QGIS plugin can be used to calculate. So for those who are interested in learning how to use this, and there is any training material or tutorial available that you could recommend?
Yes. UNCCD has an initiative called TransEarth that provides a plugin, QGIS plugin. They have extensive documentation and helping material. And in the case of Brazil, we had some problems because of the productivity indicator was not responding very well to the actual changes we saw in the territory. So in the last, we were able to produce this indicator after involving the experts from the Observatory of Caatinga, and we're able to make the computations directly outside the plugin. So we were better able to adjust the parameters, choose different inputs that were not available in the plugin. And this was the turning point that led us to finally compute the indicator. So as I said in the presentation, after these adjustments, we consulted the UNCCD technical team, showed them our point of views, and it was validated, so we could ensure that the adjustments we made did not interfere with international comparability. But TransEarth is a very interesting resource. Many countries use it to do these calculations, and they have a good documentation and community involved. We can indicate the links.
Well, we have a question in the chat. William asked, what are the standard degradation parameters that should be constantly monitored?
Okay, thanks, Wilman, for the question. The concept of degradation is a really complex one. So this is one of the challenges to monitor it, because when you are looking at the point of view of the production, for instance, you may have a degraded pasture and we'll be considering different variables. When you are looking in the point of view of biodiversity, the indicators of degradation will be different. So sometimes a land that was used for croplands and it was abandoned, it is now in the process of natural regeneration. In one point of view, it will be degraded. In other one, it will be improving because you are regaining biodiversity. So the UNCCD has its definition of degradation well defined. That is based on those three aspects that I showed: land productivity, soil carbon, and land cover. And that is what enables the countries to measure degradation in a comparable way, because each country, each area has its own view of what degradation is and what it isn't. So thinking about the UNCCD parameters, that methodological guidance document that I showed there has a introduction chapter that deals with that conceptual aspects of degradations and talks about the parameters and why those three parameters are used. So this would be one reference to say what parameters should be monitored, but it depends heavily on your goals in what you consider degradation or not, and maybe some other parameters should be important. For instance, in some ecosystems and some countries, invasive alien species are a very important driver of biodiversity loss and degradation. So even if they are not included in the UNCCD definition, they may be important in some specific cases. So there's not one single universal list, although we have this methodological reference in the UNCCD.
Okay. Well, I have a last question to you. As you made a call for action in final remarks, do you think that civil society participation, for example, through NGOs or crowdsourcing initiatives, could play a role in supporting that collection and monitor for SDGs?
Yes, yeah, very nice question. I think one really good aspect of the SDG agenda is that it aims to be transversal. So it's not only an agenda for the governments and the official institutions, but it is concerned with the dissemination of these goals and talking to all different areas of society. So yes, the NGOs and other civil society initiatives have a very important role. We see that the SDG agenda is well embraced by these different levels of society. We have municipal initiatives regarding SDGs. We have many NGOs that work with that. We see in academia many works that know the agenda and then talk about it. So I think it is a really successful aspect of this agenda. And I hope the next one, post 2030 agenda, also takes this in consideration. It will be important.
Okay, Leonardo. Thank you again for a brilliant speaker, Leonardo, and all you who joined us today. A special thanks to GPSDD for your continued partnership, which made this meaningful exchange possible. The recording of today's sessions will be available soon at the Hub's official website. And finally, we want to invite you to stay connected with the Regional Hub through our LinkedIn page to receive news. Next month, we will have another webinar, and we look forward to see you there. Bye-bye, everyone.